Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, 7:30. The agenda will be changed slightly. The one on Betty Davis, she has problems with her car. They've gone to pick her up. We'll take that as soon as she gets here. The second one is Peter Freeman for Robert Estates. To hear his petition to Roberts Estates LLC Realtors request to allow the construction of 12 single-family dwellings pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B. Subject property is located at 711 Plymouth Street, Middleborough, Assessors Map 44, Lot 2669, in the Residence Royal District. This was originally due to be on September 26th of 2013, and it's been requested that it will be continued to February 13th, 2014. Anybody, any questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to continue it to that date?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Motion,
Mr. Chairman?
yes.
I will not be here.
Yeah, we're gonna say continue it to that date, and then he has a choice to go.
He can go ahead if he doesn't have to go ahead.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
can I be heard for a second on that?
Yep. Even 2 seconds.
Very good, Mr. Chairman. Robert Kraus on behalf of the Freitas' direct abutters. I've submitted some documents to you, through Tammy, to you and the board, as well as council, with respect to site control issues associated with the property. And I hope that would be heard prior to any further substantive testimony or evidence being presented in this matter.
This is the one we just received tonight, I take it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I sent it some time ago, but I presume it was presented to the board now, today.
Right. Does the petitioner have a copy of this as well?
Yes, yes, a copy was sent to council.
Okay.
And in fact, his letter asking for the extension makes reference to my communication.
Okay. Then we'll make sure that this comes up first when we continue the hearing.
Thank you very
Okay.
much, Mr. Chairman.
Motion is made and seconded to continue this until February 13th. Who sat on this one?
I did.
Dorothy?
In favor.
Liz?
In favor.
Norman?
Favor.
Eric.
Eric?
In favor.
And I'm in favor, though. It's 5-0 to continue it to that date.
Making fun of me. No, he's looking at me, he's talking to you, and so I
That's
answered.
right.
He thought that was fun, that we spoke in unison.
Yeah. You want that?
Put that on the back.
John, do you have anything on Spruce Street?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So Attorney Burke, I believe, is away for the rest of the month. He and I spoke the end of last year. We went back and forth, as we had promised to the board we would, on the outstanding conditions in dispute. I think we've narrowed those down pretty dramatically to issues that both sides, I think, can concede here and there. One of the issues that I wanted to call to the board's attention is this. It seems somewhat insignificant, but frankly, it's kind of in a way. And that is the schedule of affordability. The board recalls in your 40B permits, you always require it's a 1-to-4 ratio. So for every 3 market rate units, the fourth would be a below market rate unit. So Attorney Burke has proposed a change to your proposed schedule, which would be a slight deviation, and it looks as if that first affordable unit wouldn't be until the 8th lot as opposed to the 4th lot. Again, it seems somewhat insignificant, but in terms of the way the statute works and your other decisions, I wanted to call that to the attention of the board. The other issues in dispute, I think we can have fine-tuned with a red line document for the board at your next meeting, the February 12th meeting. Tammy, February 12th or 13th? 13th. And I believe Attorney Burke will be back by then. So my suggestion to the board is I will have what I would consider a good, maybe quasi-final draft for the board to review and vote on in terms of the disputed issues on the 13th.
Board have any comments on the 1-to-4 ratio?
Well, I have a question. John, do you know why the request was made to change? Well, I have 2 questions. First of all, the 1-to-4, is it changing only on the first 8 and then returning to each 4? Or is it, do we know that?
It's a good question, Eric. My sense is he wants the 1 to 8 is completed, then it would return to the 1 to 4. That's
And-
my understanding of his.
And do you know why? Is he trying to jumpstart the profitability?
I've seen that before, a request to waive that requirement so to sell the market rate units, get some cash, and then move forward. Completely up to the board's discretion, although frankly, under the regulatory program, it's a 25% requirement, so I'm not quite sure whether the board can even waive it, but I call it to the board's attention.
John?
Yes.
This is just because I'm a little confused about this. Is this, I guess the term would be, is this normal that the first affordable has to be within the first X number of places? I don't seem, in all the 40Bs we've done, I don't seem to have seen this before.
In all the decisions I've written for the board, Liz, I've included that in it for a for-sale project because the regulatory program requires 25% of the units to be below market. I've always advised the board to do it in that ratio. If the board were to do it in any other ratio, then frankly, as a developer, I could build out all the market rate units and then leave town. You'd never see the affordable units built. So by keeping that ratio in play, it forces me to produce what I'm getting as the benefit of the density bonus.
Okay, that's where my confusion is.
So I don't think there's, other than a rental project, which is really hard to defeat it, I think in every 40B decision I've written for the board, it's been that same ratio.
You had a comment?
No, all my questions were answered, so we're good.
My personal opinion is we stick to the 1 to 4 to start off with. I don't see any reason to change it, because I have a feeling that it might not continue all the way through and we end up with a project half done, and we don't have the affordable units that we should have. So I don't see any sense to it. I wouldn't vote for it, I can tell you that.
I'll communicate that to Attorney Burke. And then on the remaining issues, I'll have a red line decision through Tammy in the next couple of weeks, once I hear back.
Well, this is just for the first phase of the project, correct?
I don't care if it's the first phase
Yes.
or the 10th phase.
Okay, I want a clarification for myself.
That's my understanding, Darren, it's the initial phase.
I don't have a lot of faith in developers until they prove themselves.
On a related note, we have a status conference with the Superior Court in this pending matter, which, with the board's permission, I'll seek another continuance. We've worked with the Attorney General to do that, so we'll put that off probably till May, and I'll have a draft to the board in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You had a comment.
John Capistrano from Spruce Street. I just had a comment on the 1 to 4 ratio. If you go to the, don't start with the affordable until the 8th building, you end up clustering the affordable units in one area. In other words, you build 3 houses at affordable, at market value, then you build one low market. Well, if you bypass that and you build 7 high market, and then you put 2 low, you start to cluster the low market houses together and start to break up the, I happen to agree with the chair that the law says one for every 3, that's fine, it should say that way. Thank you.
John, I actually believe the lots are designated affordable versus market rate. So
Okay.
you can't cluster
They
them.
wouldn't
They're
be
built
clustered.
as
Yes.
market rate versus affordable. So
Okay, so
what
they
you
would
just
just be building
described
out
would
the,
not happen in either scenario.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Francis Costa, Spruce Street, Middleborough. I also think it would be setting a dangerous precedent.
Good point. Thank you. You have something to say?
I'm not sure that it sets a dangerous precedent. I've just, given the type of the economy and trying to jumpstart different projects, I can understand from the developer's perspective. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I can understand what they're trying to achieve.
Who's on this one?
Could always go 1 to 6.
It's a new one, but it was in here before. It was in here before. Anybody anybody remember, since we don't have it, as to who voted on this first time around? When we read it in
I
original?
know I'm on it.
Okay, you in favor?
I'm in
To
favor.
continue it? You in favor?
I'm on it too.
And you're in favor to
In
continue?
favor.
You're in favor to continue? Okay. Well, then it's continued until the 13th of February. She did? Okay. Yep. The next one is to hear the petition of Betty Davis, 34 Fairview Street, Middleborough, Mass. 02346, wrote to request to allow for the use of the existing garage to be used as a cat boarding business. The subject property is located at 34 Fairview Street, Middleborough, Assessors Map 059, Lot 4123. So originally held on January 9th. Good evening. The floor is yours.
Would you like me to begin?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm nervous again, I'm sorry. Do I begin at the beginning, or,
You can do anything you would like.
okay, what would you like me to do, considering?
Well, I tell you what, let me read to you the letter that we have from the abutter at 511 West Grove Street, Sapakinski. As a physician who has practiced medicine in the town for the past 33 years and a property owner in the town of Middleborough for the last 28, I am writing to support the application of Betty Davis for a variance to operate a small business in a residential area named the Cat's Cradle. We have boarded our cat numerous times with Miss Davis at a previous location in Plimpton. I can assure her new neighbors that her operation and facility will not impact them in any way. I never was aware of any odors when entering the facility. She kept her facility immaculate. There were never any noise issues. The boarding cats are kept indoors 100% of the time. No traffic issues, as most 1 or 2 car visits daily, each for a few minutes to drop off or pick up a cat. Again, after almost a dozen years with Betty Davis, the Cat's Cradle, my cat was always cared for, but that is probably not the concern of the board unless they have a cat that would like to board someday. But as one who has long-term ties to Middleborough, let me again assure you, the adjoining neighbors, the board, the granting of a variance will have no negative effect on them.
That would be why very fast, just because we didn't see it.
Okay.
That's the way we did
I have other letters to the board from customers that I had contacted.
If you'd like to read them, you can. The floor
Okay,
is yours.
all right. Okay, to the town of Middleborough Zoning Board of Appeals, attention, Ms. Tammy Mendez, senior clerk. Okay, dear Ms. Mendez, we are writing to express our support for the special permit Betty Davis has applied to operate a small business, the Cat's Cradle. We've known Ms. Davis for approximately 14 years. She has cared for our 2 cats numerous times through the years. We have always had a positive experience with her and her business. Our cats have been going to her since they were kittens, and now that they are older, it is even more important to us that they be able to go to a boarding cattery where we know that they will be where we know they will take exceptional care of them. We have never had a negative incident or any experiences at the Cat's Cradle in all these years. Our cats like going there. They are happy, well cared for, and loved. Along with providing outstanding care, this cattery was always immaculate. Thank you for your consideration. Signed, John Curley and Ann Curley. To the Middleborough Zoning Board members, I'm writing in support of Elizabeth Davis' business, Cat's Cradle. We met Ms. Davis when we moved to this area in 2001. We've been boarding our numerous cats with her several times a year since then and have always been very pleased with every aspect of the boarding experience. Ms. Davis operates a very organized, well-run business with files on every cat, updated with owner contact information, veterinarian name, records showing all animals are up to date on immunizations, as well as notes on diet and feeding. Her facility has always been very clean, with clean litter boxes, pet blankets washed, food dishes clean, etc. Our cats act calm when we pick them up and are clean and well fed. She even made special accommodations for our elderly arthritic cat. Drop-off and pickup of pets is scheduled at the same time each day for several hours, so pet owners aren't coming and going at odd hours. Since it's a cats-only facility, there is no barking to disturb the neighbors or stress out the boarders. We have a sense of humor about the extent to which we are quote-unquote cat people, but it is important to us that our pets are well cared for while we're away. And in 35 years of boarding cats, the Cat's Cradle is by far the nicest place we have ever found. Sincerely, Eileen Smith. They're all kind of on that tone. Do you want me to, I don't want to take up.
If they're along the same line, you could just give us the name of the people that wrote them if you like.
Absolutely. They are along the set. I have a copy of the one that was sent to the board from Dr. Robert Sapersky. There's also one from Janet Sides, 68 Winnetoxet Road, Plimpton, Mass. She's been a client for 8 years. Another one from Susie Scott at Suffolk University in Boston. Another one from Cindy Ansel, Anctil. And she also includes her phone number if you would like to talk to her at any time. And Fred and Ann Zakreski, and I can spell their last name if you want. But all of these copies are for you folks, okay? They've been boarding with me for 5 years, and Ellen May, the Zakreskis live in Bridgewater. Ellen May lives in Middleborough, and she's been boarding with me probably between 11 and 15 years in that category. Can I bring these up to you so that?
Sure.
Some of them have 2 pages, and
Thanks.
it's moving. I haven't been able to find the stapler yet.
Any other comments you'd like to make?
Just to continue from 2 weeks ago, that I would like to reopen the business in Middleborough. And those letters really speak for themselves. I mean, I didn't ask people what to write. I just asked them to tell honestly their experiences that they have had with the Cat's Cradle during the years that they have boarded there. Oh, yeah, there are 2 couples that live in Middleborough who are here to, again, support the reopening of the Cat's Cradle, if you would like to hear from them.
We will.
Okay. First is Nick and Jackie Adams.
Hi. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the board. My name is Nick Adams. My wife is Jackie. We live in Basking Ridge. We have a cat. We have boarded with Betty for about 10 years. The cat's 12 years old. Any pet owner will tell you that as a pet owner, there's a lot of responsibility related to that. Unfortunately for cats, there's a very limited number of opportunities to board the cat. A lot of cat owners have the impression, just leave the cat home alone and you can go do whatever you want. Can't do that with our cat, for whatever reason. We've always had dogs. 12 years ago, we got a cat. Okay, since then, we've boarded with Betty. She's been very responsible, very helpful to us, very accommodating. As Betty said, when we drive in there, it's not noise or anything like that. And when we were trying to find, originally, we had boarded the cat with relatives, and that didn't work out. When we were trying to find a place to board the cat, it was very difficult to find a place that was acceptable to us from a cat perspective. We went to a lot of places board dogs and cats. That wasn't going to work for our cat. So somebody recommended Betty. We went over there because she also finds homes for cats that are strays and whatnot, and that's really a good humanitarian practice, and we thought that a lot of that. So we met with her, and we felt comfortable boarding the cat with her. And it's worked out very well. The cat's happy, we're happy, we know the cat's taken care of. And when Betty was relocating, she actually recommended another cat boarding place to us down in Manamet. It's quite a ride and quite a distance, but it worked out very well. It just shows a sense of responsibility. It's worked out well. She's a cat person. The cat likes her. We're good with that. And like I said, it's very difficult to find a acceptable place to board a cat. I can board a dog. There's 100 places, 100 to 1 ratio. So, I mean, I would hope that the board would take that in perspective, too, is there's a service being provided to the community that isn't available on an excessive level, and we appreciate that. Any questions for me?
Anybody have any questions?
Well,
Thank you.
then I thank you for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity.
Thank you. Everybody, that's cute.
And Cindy Jim Ansel, and, oh my God.
Excuse me.
On the brain, they wrote a letter.
Excuse me, Betty?
I'm sorry.
Betty,
Mr. Chairman,
you have
Yes.
to be at the
Oh, I do.
microphone.
Okay, I'm
Otherwise,
sorry.
someone will come up and yell at us.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, just a quick summary, pretty much the same as everybody else has said. Just a quick funny story also, because my wife was talking to Betty 3 weeks ago, maybe on the phone, and the cat heard Betty on the phone because she had her on speaker, and the cat just went crazy up against the phone and just rubbing up against it. Unbelievable. Like, you know, she's going on vacation. So, yeah, I really recommend that you grant her the license, yeah.
Thank you.
That's pretty much.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak in favor?
Her facility is immaculate.
All we need is your name and the,
Deb Martinelli. I live in Middleborough. Betty's facility is immaculate. I went to pick the cat up once. She hissed at me. I think she wanted to stay with Betty. I was insulted. It is truly immaculate. The first time we brought our cat there, I talked to Betty on the phone. She told me about her cattery. How it's not cages, it's condos. They're beautiful. And we didn't get a chance to see the facility before we brought the cat, so we were a little apprehensive, and we had a plan that if it didn't look as good as Betty explained it, we were taking the cat and we were going home with her. But once we saw it, we left her there, and that's where she goes every time we go on vacation. She's at Betty's.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else like to speak in favor? Is there anybody who would like to speak in opposition or has a question? If not, no, go ahead.
For you, Mr. Chairman, to the petitioner, you had a successful business over in Plimpton.
Yes.
May I ask why you left Plimpton with a successful business to come to Middleborough?
That's a very good question. I owned 7 acres of property, which became more, as the taxes went up, became more and more difficult for me to keep up with financially. And I also had a 1,700-foot driveway that was dirt. And that was about $8,000 a year to maintain, between plowing and grading and fill and all of those things that I'm sure you all are very familiar with. My neighbors, it's odd the way the 2 lots are situated to each other, but my neighbors approached me and wanted to buy my lot. My driveway ran, neither one of our houses faced the street. And so my driveway ran right in front of the front of their house. So they were concerned that if I ever sold, that anybody could move in there and do anything with that land that belonged to me, that ran in front of their view. They were very concerned about that, and they really wanted control of that. And so they approached me, and I thought a lot about it and decided it was probably time to, it was purely a financial decision.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Anybody else in the audience? If not, what is the pleasure of the board?
Just subjected to the letter. You want to do a motion?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman?
You
Yes.
don't need to read it in, I just need it subject to that.
Right. I would like to make a motion that we approve the petition of Betty Davis, 34 Fairview Street, Middleborough, Mass. 02346, relative to her request to allow for the use of the existing garage to be used as a cat boarding business. The subject property is located at 34 Fairview Street, Middleborough, Assessors Map 059, Lot 4123. Subject to the letter dated January 9th, 2013, from our Middleborough Animal Control Officer Jessica Gardner.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Yes.
Are we going to put in the hours of operation and the number of cats, I believe, had changed versus the original 28, I think we decided on 30?
Should.
The animal control officer's letter says 28.
28, but she was kind of vague in the end of that letter, so that's why I kind of went back and forth. There are technically no regulations regarding the number of cats that anybody can have. So, but as far as the business aspect of it, I think we could reasonably request that the 30, which is kind of what we had discussed when we had our last meeting.
And that's just to be on the safe side for
Okay.
me in case there's a.
If anybody has an objection, we can.
Any object to that? Okay.
Okay.
that's part of it. And it's also subject to the plan that she gave us
Yes.
At the last meeting. And
What's the
that-
date on it,
Yeah, what's the
Mr.
date?
Chair?
My builder is here if you want to.
The date on the plan is 10/11/13, received by us December 9th of 13. That's part of it now. And not to be, just so there's no confusion, not to be expanded in any way without coming back to this board. Take it for granted, but
That's very fair.
it's in there anyway, okay? Anybody object to that? No. Any other?
She also submitted hours of operation, but I don't have a copy.
Plan.
Yep.
That's in the plan?
Which,
Is it on the plan?
yeah, there's a whole page.
Should be Monday through Saturday, 10:30 to 2.
Yep.
Okay.
And
Sundays, 4 p.m.,
it's an
appointment
time
only.
at 4 o'clock.
Okay, that is outlined on a letter from her on December 3rd, 2013, as to the removal of waste and the office hours, the number of cats.
Yep, the number of cats will just change to 30
Yep,
on that page, and I think everything else would
That's
fall
right.
in.
and that page is made part of the motion as well. Okay? Anybody object? If not, Mrs. Pulsifer,
In favor?
Mr. Diegli,
I'm in favor.
Ms. Eggleston,
I'm in favor.
Mr. Priestley,
In favor.
and I'm in favor. Those 5-0 in favor to grant it to you. You will receive official notification from the board, of which will have to be filed with the Registry of Deeds, brought back. She'll explain this whole thing to you. You, Tammy.
Oh,
She'll
Okay.
explain it all, so you don't have to worry about it right at the moment.
okay,
Okay?
all right,
And then we'll have the booking page so we can follow it, and the building department will have it as well.
okay,
Okay?
yeah,
So any changes would have to come back to us.
that would be fine.
Okay?
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
So, you don't need me anymore?
No?
Nope, we don't
You
need
can
them
go
anymore.
home and do whatever you want to do.
Charge your battery.
Celebrate, hold on to your cats.
And do I understand it correctly that there's a 20-day appeal period?
Yes.
Yes.
It
I
is
have 14 days to file
14.
the decision, and then there's a 20-day appeal period.
I'm sorry?
14 days to file the decision, then there's a 20-day appeal period, and then you have to go to the registry, bring the receipt back to the building department.
Okay, so that would be a total of 34 days? Okay.
She will have that done
I'll have it
before.
done before the 14 days, so.
Okay, all right, okay.
Okay.
All right, great, I just.
If you have any
I just
questions,
needed a-
just call her.
I will. How do I get in touch with you?
What's your phone number?
I can give you my numbers.
You have phone numbers? Martha's phone number.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Do you need a copy of the plan?
No.
Okay.
All right, Eric, you're next.
The next and the last hearing is to hear the petition of Southeast Regional Network, who will lease to High Point Treatment Center, Inc., renovate the former St. Luke's Hospital for a 72-bed psychiatric hospital and outpatient clinic with 200 employees over 3 shifts. The grounds will maintain present parking, improved planting, and a small gazebo. The subject property is located at 52 Oak Street. Middleborough assesses map 50N and 50J and lot 5216. This is a continuation from a hearing that began on August 15th, 2013. I declare the hearing open, and just by matter of housekeeping, I understand Mr. Mumbauer is recovering from surgery,
Yes, sir.
and Mr. Soers is here in his place, representing the petitioner tonight.
Yes, sir.
Let me just, because this is something that happened just by way of housekeeping. There was a letter that was sent here to the zoning board's office from our Board of Selectmen on December 16, 2013. And I'd like to just read this letter into the record before we lose sight of it. Dear Chairman Priestley and board members, please be advised that members of the Board of Selectmen have toured the Plymouth facility of the High Point Treatment Center with President and CEO Daniel Mumbauer and discussed his intention to bring a secure psychiatric evaluation treatment center to Middleborough at the site of the former St. Luke's Hospital. High Point has already shown its intent to be a good neighbor and community member in our town. It has wasted no time in cleaning up and securing its property, including the removal of tangled overgrowth, covering graffiti on the building's exterior and signs, boarding up open windows and doors, and installing a new chain link fence between the front parking lot driveway and the abutting medical building on Center Street. They will be making a $12 million investment in the St. Luke's property. Mr. Mumbauer intends to create a staff of approximately 200 with an annual payroll of $10 million, who will ultimately work in Middleborough, many of whom will be new hires from Middleborough. Mr. Mumbauer has been diligent in addressing concerns from our from our townspeople, from parking to security to patient release plans, and shows a great willingness to establish a positive relationship with our town. Mr. Mumbauer has heard the town's concerns about potential drains on our ambulance services and has agreed to contract directly with the Brewster Ambulance for those services. Should the Zoning Board of Appeals grant a permit for High Point in Middleborough, the Board of Selectmen will look forward to welcoming this influx of workers and the positive economic impact it will bring to our town. Very truly yours, for the Board of Selectmen, Stephen J. McKinnon, Chairman. So, that just dated 12/16 and has been there for a little bit. So, as I said in an email, one of the things that came to light was that we've never had a comprehensive engineer's presentation of the project up on the board for all of the board members. We sort of jumped all over the place. So that's one of the things I want to get done tonight first. The second thing I would like to discuss is the pilot payment in lieu of taxes. I want to talk about that, so don't let us close the hearing until we have. And the third item, which has been a topic of discussions and whatnot, is parking as it relates to the facility itself, and some options that are available to help mitigate concerns that, from my point of view, that the abutters have. Okay. All right, so we do have, and I don't know how, I mean, they're rather lengthy, so I'm not sure if they should all be read into the record. I'd like to at least reference who they're from and dated, as opposed to, and I'm assuming you're going to have copies of these in your possession tonight, and if you don't, you'll let us know.
Copies of drawings?
Letters, no, letters.
Okay.
These were, some of them were submissions today, some of them were well, I'll just give them to you, okay? I think that's the easiest thing to do. So, huh?
Tammy gave me.
Oh, you did, okay. So, just for the record, then, we have a letter that was received January 13th from Robert Whalen, our building commissioner, referencing Tibbetts Engineering Corp's proposal for plan a High Point Treatment Center. We also had a letter received January 22nd, 2014, from Ruth Jeffries, which is an extensive letter, a lot of which deals with the engineering that has already been being worked on. And that, again, was received January 22nd. We have a letter that was received January 16th from our chief of fire. And along with that was a copy that he sent of a letter to us that he originally sent to us dated August 22nd. And most of that was expressing his concern, again, on the drain on his departments. Do you have that?
Mr. Chairman, the last two I don't have, Tim.
Okay.
About the planning board?
No. I have the planning board, I don't have the fire.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't have this one.
And then we also have a letter from Stephen Spataro. It's several pages long, and it involves what he would like to see in terms of upgrades to certain things around the town, Oak Street, Center Street reconfiguration, parking lot reconfiguration, and he has your cash flow analysis and balance sheet to substantiate the fact that High Point can afford it.
I don't have that.
Did you get that one?
Yes, sir.
I emailed that to everybody.
Okay. And then we also have a letter or email, I suppose, that was sent, that's in my package tonight, from Ruth Jeffrey,
That just came.
dated January 23rd at 4:38 PM. And that's about the Oak and Center Street. Do you have that one?
Yes, sir.
You do, okay. And I believe that's it. I believe that's it. So I suppose if the situation arises, we can address any of the specific concerns that are in there. But I think a lot of what I'd like to get through tonight will speak directly to most of the letters that are here in terms of comment. So
We
what I
have,
would...
Tibbetts Engineering here.
Yep.
And we also have Amory Engineering here, and we have our architect here. So
Good.
would you rather speak to the architect first, or?
I would like to see an overview of the project, the layout, utilizing the most current engineered plans, those which have been discussed with our building department,
That would be.
et cetera, and I'd like, because I don't think the board has had the benefit up to this point for a comprehensive review and presentation.
Sure.
So I don't suspect that it'll take all that long, but I think for the benefit of all of us, I think, and for the community, we should see it.
Then Bob would be the right one to present it, because he's done all the work on it.
We will trust you in that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Darren, do you want to move your seat so you can see that?
Yeah.
Is it tilted to you, or is this set up for the cameras?
I think it's set up for the camera, which is in the corner there.
And I'd also like the abutters to be able to see it as well. So you can,
Anybody needs
feel
to-
free to move up front, move closer if you'd like.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, well, thank you for the record. My name is Bob Rogers with Tibbetts Engineering. We're in Taunton at 716 County Street. This is, as you know, the site of the former St. Luke's Hospital. It's a 3.5-acre site. The hospital itself is just under 3/4, or around 3/4 of an acre. I guess the goal of this site design really was to do as little as possible to refurbish the site, do only what was needed. I guess the beauty of it is you had a 72-bed hospital, and we're proposing a 72-bed treatment center. And so where there's a lot of things that need to be done to the building, initially we weren't proposing to do very much to the site. But this first plan is a straight existing conditions plan. You have a two-way access exit onto Center Street. There are 2 separate entrances onto Oak Street, and there's no access to Arch Street. The site is graded such that a portion of the site drains toward Center. The majority of the site drains toward the intersection of Arch and Oak. But anything that goes into Center Street drainage-wise just follows down along the road, and everything ends up down here in these couple of catch basins. So the Oak Street drainage system is pretty inadequate. Catch basins, and I think it's not up to snuff, as we say. So in terms of the drainage system, the other downside to the existing site is all of the roof runoff right now is connected to the on-site sewer line. So all of the roof runoff right now ends up in the Oak Street drainage system.
certainly a lot of comments in the planning department's letter that pertain to drainage. Initial site plan submission was 98 parking spaces, and then as we started to discuss that issue and work on that issue, we revised our plans and we got up to 115 parking spaces. As we further discussed and looked at the areas that we had available, we currently have a plan with 130 spaces. And now, in order to make it work for drainage and obviously have a responsible, compliant drainage design, we are eliminating as many of the existing impervious surfaces as possible. So while we're adding pavement to get up to 130 spaces, we're taking away the helipad, we're taking out some concrete pads to the rear near the abutters. We're removing any walkway, any impervious surface that is no longer going to be needed. Critical to eliminate the discharge of the roof runoff into the street drain. So there is only one area, there's a brand new collection system for the roof runoff. So there's only one area where that comes out. So it's very easy for us to pick up that roof runoff. Basically, conveying it, infiltrating it, and then overflowing it where it is currently overflowing, or where all of the site runoff ends up now, which is at that intersection. So there is not now, and there is not on these plans, a drainage system for the parking lot other than a rain garden system that we have added to this landscape area. So all of the roof runoff goes into a Cultex system. We are, using the grade, or we're designing based on the grade to run that over toward Arch Street. There's a special manhole that restricts the outflow from the Cultex system. And the long story short is, with the current design, a 2-year storm, there's 30% less rate and 30% less volume of stormwater leaving this site. So any drainage that's coming onto our site from the neighbors, we're not collecting it. We're not proposing to collect it. It's kind of a constant. When we did our drainage calculations, we just looked at the 3.5 acres that we can control, and basically, like I said, a 2-year storm, 30% less water, a 100-year storm, 20% less water. And that's based on I think a conservative infiltration rate. There's some really good sand on this site. The infiltration rate that I'm using is based on a soil classification. So we're calculating that in the Cultex it's going to infiltrate at 8 inches an hour. It could be 12, 16, 20 inches an hour. So the numbers are what they are, but the performance we think is going to be better. So that's drainage. Landscaping, there's a lot of landscaping existing on the site. There's a lot of chain link fence around the site. The chain link fence, we're proposing to plant ivy to screen the fencing. The only new fence, this is kind of a current change in the plan, but the new fencing would be limited to a 6-foot chain link fence, black vinyl, along Arch Street and up to the northern Oak Street entrance. So previous plans called for all new 8-foot fence. That was my mistake. So we're just going to do a new 6-foot, obviously subject to the board's opinion and input. But all the 3-foot, 4-foot high chain link fence that's out there up against the neighbors, we would propose that to remain. Lighting, there's, it's a little bit of an in-progress thing. I mean, the standard condition for lighting is you have it being adequate and you're not shedding onto the neighbors. There's a lot of lighting that's gonna be mounted on the building. They're gonna spec new LED lighting. There's lighting, flood lighting on the couple of utility poles on Oak Street. They're working on that, but, you know, we know what the goal is. Utilities, very, very minor need for new site utilities. A new domestic water service to the rear of the building, some new electric, underground electric in the front. That's it. Did a construction phase, erosion sedimentation control plan. Again, very limited to notes, protocol, a truck runoff pad at the entrance to the main parking lot, some silt sacks in the existing catch basins in Oak Street, just a construction phase, erosion sedimentation control plan. Then we've got a couple of detail sheets to show the fencing, the screen dumpster, a typical concrete walk detail, details for the rain garden. We've added to that a recent request from your review engineer. So just kind of the basic construction details. Traffic, we really did not anticipate, you know, having to evaluate extensively traffic, just again, based on the historic use of the property. We certainly will look at the latest information from planning as far as the intersection. But we got a lot going on, I guess. We have what is needed to be done to make this a successful project. We have the pilot issue. We have the issue with there is a existing town-owned parking lot in very poor shape across from Oak Street. I believe you all should have received an email. I put together a few things from the assessor's GIS system. That lot across the street needs pavement badly, I guess, and with pavement normally comes striping, but you know, I think that has capacity for roughly 60 vehicles, something to consider. And I guess that's it. I would spend any time, obviously, on any specific questions, areas that you have, but you know, as a redevelopment project that results in a net loss of impervious, and it's only a couple of thousand square feet, I really think that, and you know, having 30% to 20% less runoff is doing a good, I think we're meeting our responsibility in that aspect.
Any questions from any of the board members? I have one. It's very minor. You said that you would put up 6-foot chain link fence, and our building commissioner said that your plan noted it being replaced with an 8-foot chain link fence. Which is it, 8?
Yes, sir. Well, yeah, we've, you know, unfortunately, we performed a set of revisions, and then we didn't have the meeting 2 weeks ago. So we did receive the building commissioner's letter. I responded in writing today, so his letter is correct. I had made a mistake on the previous plans, and I called for new 8-foot chain link fence everywhere. And now, currently, the plan has a note that we're going to put 6-foot chain link fence in this location only, and all other fence to remain. And that is only something that I've just, you know, finalized today.
And so the issue of the 3- and 4-foot high chain link fencing that's pre-existing?
Correct. That's all.
What is that going to be changed to?
It will not be changed, sir. It will stay in its present condition, and it will have ivy planted along inside the property. At least
The 3-foot and the 4-foot fence are on the front of the property, so there's shrubs there. And the shrubs will remain and that fence will stay along the sidewalk. Where the taller fence exists is between the abutters in the property on the west side and on the Arch Street side.
Which
And
used to be the emergency room
Yes, I
side.
believe it was, yes.
That's where the 4-foot fencing was, right?
No, it was on the front.
It's, well, I got 3, 4, and 5. My surveyors measure everywhere they go, but.
All right, well, let me just make it very easy, okay? Because I don't want to get too in-depth on 3, 4, 6, or 8-foot fencing. Whatever is in the best interest of the abutters, based upon the building commissioner's comment, is what I want there.
That's what we'd glad to do.
Okay, so I don't care, it doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
The only concern I have is the full screening of all of the abutters to the best of our ability.
Yeah, I guess, and so I should point that out, that this area, and I understand, certainly understand the concern with headlights shining onto the abutting properties. But, you know, these parking spaces are down at 98, 99, and there is a 5-foot, you know, the abutting property is up at 104. So this area, at least, naturally the headlights will just be shining into the bank, into the grade.
Yeah, I read your response, I saw that.
But, and, you know, yeah, we don't, you know, they have hedges on the other side of the property, but certainly whatever we need to do to screen our fence.
Mr. Chairman?
Liz?
Question on lighting, and I assume, I'm going to use the term lighting in the parking lot, I assume.
Yes, and-
Quite frankly, you were very nonchalant, saying LED lights, lights on the building, pole lights, doesn't go off the building, but I can't find on this plan,
That's
where-
correct. There
where
is,
you plan to put them. So
Correct.
is it possible to get a lighting plan? And how tall are
Yeah.
the poles going to be?
Yes.
And what is the style of the poles? And where do you plan to put them?
yes, just let me point out briefly that, you know, again, currently, there are a couple of utility poles. We're evaluating it because what happens is, you spec what you need and what's available on the building, and there are a lot of locations where there currently are lights, and those are just gonna be replaced with new units. And I'm sorry that we don't have that information right now, but, so what they've done is now they've evaluating the photometrics and what the performance of those lights on the buildings would be. And then we think we only need a couple of pole-mounted lights on Arch Street. But, you know, and again, it's gonna be something that we will be able to provide to you very shortly.
You know, I'm sitting here looking at, I think it's the west side of the building, where there's parking in this upper area. I'll use the term upper and lower, it's a little bit easier. On the map, if you're going to have lights coming off of the buildings, you're going to have to be very careful that any of the neighbors on the other side aren't having lights coming into their backyard, and yet you still have to provide safety for staff, visitors, anyone who's going to be parking and walking to that at night. It's a dark area.
Correct. There's a couple of floods right now on the upper corners. There's a lot. I had marked up, but, so I think it's gonna be pretty easy for us to put new units there that shine down, that, again, I'm used to just getting a condition on every project. It's adequate for your people. It doesn't, you know, provide glare, and at some point you submit a photometric plan that proves it, and then if there's a problem in the future, you'd have to fix it, obviously, but, so.
Yeah, and I think it's very customary of the board. We will have a lighting plan that'll be very, very specific. It'll detail all the lights, their manufacturer, their lumens, their shape, their hanging type. It'll, how much will wash versus not wash out on neighbors' properties, their height. We'll have a complete lighting plan submitted, just as we would a landscaping plan, a parking plan, you name it. It's customary of the board, and I'm sure that you're prepared to, you know, provide that.
Yes, it's coming together as
Yep.
we speak.
But I think Liz brings up a good point. You know, that's something that is very important. And again, just so you know, when I talk about fence for lighting off the property, I'm concerned about the abutters. When I look at fence heights, I'm concerned about the abutters. All right, so really, all of those plans are, the motivation behind it is to make sure that you're a good neighbor and that it's not some glare of light from, you know, the adjacent property, okay? So, but I know that you will provide that.
Yes, we will.
Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Chair. Sure. Chief of the Butters. Delivery access for your parcel here. Are you having a tough time determining the distance from where your proposed delivery area is in conjunction with your parking, and are you going to actually be able to get trucks in
Oh,
there?
sure. This is the new truck access,
Mhm.
where a box truck or what have you would back up into that area. So I don't think we're trying to get trailer trucks in there, but a box truck basically
Okay.
would, you know, be able to back into that spot, you know.
I don't know what's servicing your current facilities now, so I'm not sure.
Typical deliveries would be food,
Yep.
laundry
Laundry.
pickup, laundry delivery, a lot of office supplies.
Yep.
What
So,
types of trucks, Carl?
In all honesty, I believe Cisco will be a small trailer.
Yep, usually 28
20 foot.
feet.
Cisco will be. But all the rest of the trucks, UPS is probably the largest truck,
Okay.
okay, of all the other deliveries that I do.
Well, we've clustered the parking, and I understand why we're doing that. I'm just making sure there's an adequate room to get in and people to navigate.
What is the normal times of deliveries through other facilities' experiences? Are you motoring diesel trucks at midnight?
No, the food delivery is somewhere 8:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, depending on the site. Usually before 9, because I get in at 9 and they're usually gone. You may get office furniture anytime during the day, middle of the day, office supplies, typically your mail. We're not doing any deliveries ourselves, other than we do pick up and deliver our linens. And we have a linen service. Those are usually in the morning too, first thing.
Yep, straight trucks.
Take the first pickup might be in Plymouth at 7 o'clock, and then we let the pickup is somewhere here at 8:30. This pickup will probably be, one of those will probably change and will come to here, that kind of a pickup.
So is it safe to say that we don't have to worry about any truck activity before 7 a.m.?
Yes, we normally don't,
Monday through Friday? Nothing on Saturday?
We probably have food coming pretty
I'm
regularly.
just asking.
I've never seen a food delivery on Saturday, we've never scheduled
Okay.
it for Saturday. That would have, I don't believe any of them do Saturday,
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Well, just double check on that, because that would be helpful to know that as well.
With weekend staff is slightly lower, so
Mhm.
they aren't usually the staff that's used to picking that stuff, getting, you know what I'm saying, signing for it. So,
Well, I mean, you would know better how often the deliveries come. It would be based on, you're obviously serving meals, and you have to, there's a certain schedule as to how often that have to replenish your kitchen.
We're replenishing the kitchen twice a week.
Okay, so that's not bad. That's
Definitely it's
that's
twice a
fine.
week. We'd like to do it less, but then that would mean we'd need a lot more square feet for freezer space and
Yep,
refrigerator space.
absolutely. There's only so much capacity.
Twice a week, and we're trying to keep as much fresh food as possible.
Mhm.
So,
Sure.
you know, bananas only last so long.
Just trying to get an idea of the type of traffic and how often, that's all.
And I know the board's engineers reviewed a number of things, and I guess this is like a working process for you guys. Do you have any comments that you'd like to make relative to what has been presented thus far?
Just a couple of, excuse me, quick things. Pat Brenner with AME Engineers for the record. I did submit a letter to the board dated December 26th, with a number of comments, which many of them have been addressed already. And one of my concerns was one of the things that Bob was talking about with the drainage system, there not being anything for the parking lot. And my suggestion was that they consider doing something to help alleviate what's running off that parking lot right now. And as Bob had mentioned in his presentation, they are proposing rain gardens along, and I'll show you where those are. As he mentioned, the whole site pretty much slopes down to this intersection of Arch and Oak. The rain gardens would be along this portion of the parking and this portion up to about this part. So what that would do would help intercept some of that overland runoff, give it a chance to at least treat it and a possibility to infiltrate it. So it should help alleviate even more. They haven't taken any credit for that in their calculations, but it is an improvement over what's there today. And there was a couple of zoning issues. I know the parking is I'm not going to get into the counting, but the parking count, but there are a couple of issues. The zoning regs require 24-foot aisle width behind parking spaces. Just want to note that behind these 10, it's only 20 feet wide. The zoning regulations also require a 20-foot offset from parking to the property line. Most of these areas are all existing pavement, so I would presume those are pre-conforming, non-existing. These 10 would be new parking spaces, and they're 16 to 18 feet off that rear property line, so I just want to point that out to the board as well. And right now, Bob and I are working back and forth on a couple of other issues, but those are just the main things that I want to bring up.
You thought about snow removal? Doesn't look like there's much room there to stack snow.
No, there really isn't. There's a little bit of room here, and then, some of the grassed areas, but maybe a little back here. But yeah, there's not a lot of room for snow removal unless they can use some of this grassed area out front where the helipad is now. But that's something that we could probably ask them to identify some areas.
That's a good point, Ron. Is that it? Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair. Yep. Just sitting here looking at the plans, what is the proposed use for the garage that's in the back? Is that just gonna be for maintenance?
Storage, maintenance will probably do, some deliveries that may be too large to get into the building at the time, put it there till we can either assemble or put it together, whatever,
Okay.
those kind of things. Maintenance always needs room.
That is true.
Is there anyone here from the audience that has a question regarding the presentation of the site plan at all, before we move on to the next subject? Are you good? Would you like a copy, a set of the current plans that we're looking at to take with you? We have several of them. We'll make sure that you get a set, okay?
Just need your name.
My name's Stephanie DeGrecci, 64 Oak Street. I get everybody's concerned about the parking. What I'm concerned about now is there's no land left there. And while I understand the concern and the need for parking, realistically, there's 200 employees over 3 shifts. The people who are, the patients that are there don't have cars. They're coming in through the hospital. They're not coming in with cars. They're not leaving with cars. It's not going to necessarily solve the problem for parking that everybody's concerned about, because it's the church that's concerned about parking. It's these neighbors because of the church and because of the AA meetings. Unless High Point's ultimately going to allow these people to continue to park in the parking lot, it's still not going to solve the issue. When realistically, that's their private parking lot. They take liability if they're going to allow the church to park there. There's still going to be all these parking issues. I just don't see the need for 130 parking spaces when, like you're saying, now there's nowhere for snow to go. That's taking away that grass and that land. Our basement floods when it gets too bad because of all that drainage and stuff. So I can just see now there's no more land to soak up some of that drainage, nowhere for the snow to go, and you've got 130 parking spots that realistically you don't need. There's the 200 employees over 3 shifts.
Right.
That's maybe 70 people there at any given time. During the day at the most. At night it's going to be less because you're not going to have patients coming in for like their reviews with the psychiatrist. The only time it's gonna be is during the day, and even then, you still 100 tops parking. I just think that's kind of a little excessive, and we're losing that grass. So I mean, unless they're taking on the liability and allowing the church to continue to park there, I just don't see it solving the parking problem that everybody's concerned about, and I just think the drainage is just gonna, like you said, there's nowhere for snow now, and you're taking away a lot of that grass and that land. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, please. Okay, why don't we just move right on to parking? Because it seems to be an issue. So, to address your concern about the parking and why it's such a big deal is because of the zoning bylaw for hospital use and the number of spaces required per bed, okay? And so that is, as it's pointed out in our building commissioner's letter, 314 spaces. Now, I suppose we could put up a garage, you know, 3 or 4 levels high or whatever, yeah, I don't know, but, so, by strict interpretation of the zoning bylaw, that's what's required, all right? And for the most part, I think everybody's collectively agreed that maybe the 130 is not enough, but we're not sure that we need 314, okay? So the landscaping plan and the screening plan for the abutters and all of that stuff, you know, it's a 3.5 acre parcel owned by them, you know, to do with it as they choose. To help mitigate some of the things that you have to deal with in your life is things like trees, plantings, you know, just general screening, so that their operation doesn't disrupt your life. So this whole parking issue is, quite frankly, it's a deal breaker for High Point. They can't meet the requirement, period. Okay? The question then becomes, as a town, with that particular location and its lack of being able to be repurposed into anything other than what it was originally built to be, a hospital, do we want to say goodbye to High Point because of the number of spaces? All right? And I'm only going to speak as one member of the board. The answer is a resounding no. Okay? For a lot of different reasons. So the issue becomes, how do you increase the parking capacity of the facility without being able to do some weird construction, if you will, on the location, even if we could at all? Hence, the Pearl Street parking that's across the street behind where the food pantry is, that's in complete disrepair. Our town planner has sent us, and Mr. Spataro sent it as well, that we had applied for grants on 2 projects. And the one of the 2 projects was that Pearl Street parking. And it's quite extensive, the plan, and I'll put my hand on it in 1 second here. There it is. And it involves paving and curbing and drainage and planting and trees and shrubs and seating and benches and trash receptacles, electric handholds, conduit, wiring, removing and resetting poles and fixtures, signage, both regulatory and pedestrian, police detail, notices and advertisements, and bid and construction phase oversight management, and to make contingencies and design and engineering fees. So there is this Pearl Street parking lot and walkway plan that has been put out for grant to the town for, I understand, 5 years unsuccessfully. And that parking lot that is .91 acres, if they were to do this, this isn't actually dated, but at the time of its writing, the total expenditure was $294,218.75 to do this parking lot in the manner that it was applied for. That is one hot parking lot, $300,000. So the question becomes, we need the parking lot for High Point. We also need the parking lot for the church. We also need the parking lot for the food pantry. So there was some discussion as to whether or not to have High Point enter into some long-term lease agreement with the town and literally lease the parking lot. Well, now we have issues with who's entitled to use it and when and how many spaces, and more importantly, that has to be voted at town meeting, which delays the project out and literally leaves the project in the winds of what the town votes, okay? So I think there's, in my view, personally, just my view, I want High Point to redo that parking lot at their expense. I want new pavement, I want lines, stripes, I want signage, and I want lighting. I'm not too concerned about trash receptacles and, or metal benches, or trees, or anything like that. So that is something that I'm requesting through you, Mr. Soares, that you bring back to Mr. Mumbauer and say, and I don't know what that will cost, you will have to figure that out on your own, and you will have to work with our building department and your engineers to figure it out. But what that would in effect do is give us an additional 60 spaces that basically covers all of the overflow, if required, from High Point, gives the church its continued accessibility to that lot, it gives the food pantry its continued accessibility to that lot. The town owns it. High Point gifted the renovations and the upgrades. And we get a much better looking lot that is designed and intended to be 10 by 20
That's right.
spaces, which it was already spec'd out for. And then the issue becomes, okay, Eric, the 60 spaces still don't get you to 314. So what's the deal? Well, it sort of goes like this. If this, someone said earlier, if we were talking about this project a year and 11 months ago, we would have what is known as a pre-existing, non-conforming right grandfathered clause, where they wouldn't be required really to do anything as it relates to the parking. But they don't. The thing has been dead and empty for 15 some odd years, all right? So, however, there are certain things that have taken place relative to that piece of property where I think we could instruct council to, I hate this phrase, lawyer up language, but to utilize language in the decision with conditions that allows that lot to be developed. It recognizes the fact that when it was an approved 40B, that would have required more spaces than the lot provided, even though it was still out of being grandfathered then. That was not a problem. It was approved as a 40B. And any other, development that was there, the parking was never an issue. So there is a fine line between our interpretation of the strict bylaw and weighing that against the benefit to the town and the townspeople and the project. So I think there's a good opportunity that we don't have to be at 314 spaces, provided that High Point develops that lot. My personal view. There's all these other board members that have to vote that same way in order to make that happen.
Mr. Chairman, would the town entertain that we make a donation towards and that the town hasn't done it the way they want.
Well, if you want to make a donation based upon today's current dollars, okay, of whatever the $294,000 project is, as it was laid out for the federal grant, in today's current dollars, based upon today's current project cost, I'll be absolutely willing to take that
Okay, I mean,
into consideration.
could that be put as part of what the town council is gonna write as one of the alternatives or options?
Well, before we write anything, I just want you to say that, yes, High Point is going to fund or make a donation, and I guess we can talk about the best way to handle that. Because the town of Middleborough is not a construction company.
Basically, we're not either, so.
No, I know, but the people that are
understand.
redoing your building
Mm-hmm,
either are or know the right people to do it.
okay,
And I know we can give you all of the plan specifications that created this grant request.
okay.
So, again, this is just Eric talking now.
No,
don't
I understand,
I don't
right.
believe that we would want to entertain taking that money and trying to figure out how to do it on your behalf. I
Okay.
think, and I'm not sure, but I'm thinking that what we would want is to give you the design specs through our building department and our planning department and say, here, build it,
Okay,
okay?
yep, all right.
So, that's my view on planning. I'm not sure, on parking. I'm not sure if anyone else has a comment, a pro, a con, for or against. I don't see us going anywhere other than logically where we went just now. So,
I would say that sounds like a very sound, well-thought-out solution. Thank you.
I would have to agree with the chairman. I think you might be better off building it yourself because you may not have to meet the exact criteria of this to achieve what we want. So that may be something you want to look at or think about.
No, I understand what you're saying. There's a lot of regulations depending on who does it, and I understand that. But there will still be some certain minimum regulations that the town will expect, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
the construction standards would hold the same for any parking lot, I'm
I
assuming.
mean, we're not paving a driveway.
Some of the details and the
What's that?
minutia.
We're not paving a driveway.
no,
No,
you're
no,
you're
it's-
paving a
there
pretty
is a
significant
difference.
It's a
area.
significant area.
Right.
But
It's
so
been-
here's the
it's-
thing, though, you're dealing with pedestrian safety.
Right.
You're dealing with walkways, you're dealing with lighting, you're dealing with all of the things that are important relative to the parking lot, and those have to remain intact.
Where the parking lot would not be used normally at night, does it really need lighting?
Well,
I
I
don't
know
know that-
here, in this part of the country, like right around this time of the year,
Okay.
at 4:30 in the afternoon, it's dark.
Okay.
So, I don't know,
All right.
is Plymouth really that far away? Yeah, it's like, actually.
That was good, I like that.
Anyway, but you see my point. But
No, I
again,
see your point.
and if I were High Point, and I'm not trying to speak for you, I would say, get me a copy of that grant, get with the engineers, get with our building commissioner and his agents, and say, what can we do to make this the best parking lot in Middleborough's history? That's what I would do.
Minus the trash cans and the benches?
Could I also add in, this is not about Pearl Street parking lot, I will admit, but when the building commissioner was talking about you were talking about the parking spaces, the 10 parking spaces that are on the top of the building, please understand. I'm
In the
going
back,
by
it's kind
map.
of the back.
Yeah, which have differences and so forth. Is there a possibility of designating them as miniature car parking spaces?
Compact car?
Compact car parking
We've done that in a
spaces?
number of
We've
different
done that
projects.
in quite a few projects.
Because one of the reasons we have the spaces we have is to prevent SUV doors from being dinged. But if you don't have an SUV, you might want your own particular little parking area that your car can get into and the behemoths can't. And that might,
Yeah, I don't know if
Structure
you would have
that.
redesigned that as for, not the standard, are those 10 by 20 in there?
Yeah, 10 by 20.
Right, so I'm not sure from a compact car standard, to reduce those 10 spaces in the back, how much more width you would pick up that Pat talked about, both in terms of the setback to the property line side and the 24-foot width, which is now currently at 20. You'd have to figure that out, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess, with this site being how it is, and, it's not retail, it's institutional. I don't have any concern at all that operationally that's not gonna be a problem to have a 20-foot aisle width. The same thing over here, it's, yes, we've got 10 by 20 spaces, and there's this huge beech tree in the island. And, we've had several site visits where everybody's parked their pickup trucks all over here, and there hasn't been one fender bender. So, we could reduce the size of those and increase the aisle width.
No, I think we're talking only the 10 spaces out back, only those, and reducing them to the compact car size. And then you can come back and tell us how much space did we pick up in the width, and how much space, that's engineers, you guys do that.
We'd be glad to do that.
But you may,
Sure.
you may satisfy Pat's,
Yep.
concerns, okay?
Sure,
And it's only on those 10 spaces.
right.
So I think that's a good suggestion, Liz. So,
We'd be glad to do that.
are there any other questions from any of the board members regarding parking? Any other abutters have any questions or concerns they'd like to express about parking? Maybe offer up a different solution? Okay, let's move on to the last and final, and that is what we have now come to know, pilot, which is payment in lieu of taxes. So, we know that RKG and Associates have done an economic impact study. We had a presentation whereby they said that the drain on town services would equate to approximately between $91,000 and $93,000 annually. And we know that Dan Mumbauer, at that hearing that night, came in with an offertory letter providing $100,000 annually to the town as a payment in lieu of taxes. And I thought that was a pretty good jumping off point. But based upon my history of what I do in my private life, I was a little concerned at how quick he came to the table. So, with that said, from there, many things developed. And when I say many things developed, a lot of ideas came to be. And several of them came from abutters, and several of them came from our fire department and our police chief, and just a number of different things. We had a person come up and talk about civilian dispatchers, having High Point pay for civilian dispatchers that allows police to be more, out from behind the desk and out on the road. There's a whole bunch of things. And then along with that, sort of working in parallel, I was working with council as to how to develop a factor or a value by which to determine how, as the economic conditions change in the town over time, do we keep pace with the payment in lieu of taxes? Because a static payment of $100,000 today may sound good, but it may be not as good 10 years from now. So that was my concern, and so I was working with council trying to develop this. And at the same time, it was suggested to me, why don't you just ask and see what the assessed tax value would be on that property, which I then went to do. So I solicited the help of Barbara Erickson, and we ran the numbers, and the first thing she came through with is a building with a $9.1 million assessed value would be about $156,500 in that area.
And so I asked her to bridge the gap between the 91, not, realizing at the time that what we were really doing is comparing apples and oranges, and that is that we're talking about cost of services from the town versus a tax base revenue. So we weren't dealing with the right things. We're looking at retail, meaning the valuation of the property versus the cost to service it. So I then provided her with the numbers that RKG came in, and they went and looked at High Point's pro forma that they had submitted, and they have the building assessed at $11 million and change, which then, based upon a commercial tax rate at $16.59 per $1,000, comes to $182,500 a year. So, in my view, I said hot dog. That's the payment that High Point should make to the town each year. I don't need to consult with council anymore on how to factor in a formula that keeps up with the economic conditions. It really holds true to the title, payment in lieu of taxes. It's an actually 1-for-1 ratio at this point. That's what it is. It's a payment in lieu of the taxes. So my request is to have High Point increase their $100,000 offer to $182,500. And then I thought beyond that, we would do two things, because I want to try to accommodate as many people's requests of needs that we could beyond just covering the cost of services. So for instance, if we wanted to hire a civilian dispatcher, my thought was to take the funds of the $8,200 and $182,500 and split it into two payments. And when I say payments, it might be one payment going to two places. One will go to a specialty fund, special fund, and one will go to the general fund. So the general fund is the one that will handle all of the cost of services, and the special fund will be what our town government decides on the balance, how to best utilize those funds to maximize those things that everyone would like. So for instance, we have a letter from our fire department that would request $278,000 annually in order to have you folks here. Now, I don't know the exact needs, but he's obviously not putting a number down because it's not important. All right, but can we do all of it? Probably not. Maybe the police chief would like a couple new cruisers. I don't know. And I don't want this board to be responsible for earmarking monies, because really this board, one, is not designed to do that. Two, we don't have the intimate knowledge that our department heads have that control the budget. And three, they will be the ones responsible to put the money where it's best serving the community, us, as a population. So my proposal would be to Dan Mumbauer to, your payment in lieu of taxes is going to be whatever the commercial tax rate is year after year, year after year, year after year. And if it goes up, so does your annual payment. If it goes down, has it ever gone down? It could, right? It still could go down. Then your payment would go down. But the fact of the matter is, the cost of covering the services will be accommodated, and the extras, my personal belief is I don't want to hold High Point hostage on either backed up projects that we've not been able to afford, take this opportunity because your balance sheet, your cash flow, and all of that shows that you're profitable, or bring into the conversation the fact that the president makes X amount of dollars and therefore that he should be paying more. I'm not interested in doing that. I'm trying to be as fair and equitable as I can and realistic for the town looking down the road. So I think between the parking lot, the payment in lieu of taxes equaling the commercial rate of $16.59 per 1,000, splitting it into a special account and the general fund account, to me, I don't know that we should be asking for more than that. Legitimately, I'm not comfortable asking for more than that. So that's sort of where my thinking is. And I know you can't speak necessarily for Dan or High Point tonight, or maybe you can?
Not for that kind of money.
Right.
That's for sure.
Right. So, and that's okay. But I'm just, and we could take a little, like a little litmus test here, or a straw poll if you'd like, to see how important it is for each of the board members that are voting this up or down. So, but I have to believe, and I'm sorry to use your own numbers against you, okay? But I would find it hard to believe that based upon the numbers that I've seen, that it would be a struggle. And number one. And number two, in my view, your numbers only support what I think your reputation stands for. And what I mean by that is, you're not a bunch of Mickey the Dunces running around not knowing what you're doing. You have a strong balance sheet, cash flow, and all of that, only because you do a very good job. And as far as I'm concerned, and where I come from in my business, looking at the 3 years prior, Dan should be probably making 3 times what he's making. So, to me, it's irrelevant what he makes for this project. What's important here is not losing sight of the very first thing, which to me personally is the need for that facility in this area. There is a need for a facility like that in the area. And I was appalled to see the news today, digressing a little bit, with an interview with this quarter-kilo cocaine, heroin bust here in Middleborough, where the chief used the words, the war on heroin abuse. It's a war. And the $10,000 in cash that was taken, and the fact that this was already neatly distributed into the street sale packets. So whether we want to say we have a problem or we don't want to say we have a problem, we can turn a blind eye and just ignore it. But we have a very serious problem. And it's both in terms of addiction abuse and psychological issues that are, well, psychiatric. So to me, I think it was Neil Rosenthal that said it, that this could end up being a great relationship between the town and High Point for years to come. And it's going to take care of a facility that has just been an albatross, an eyesore, and really hopefully rejuvenate the downtown in a lot of different ways. But the thing I don't want to lose sight of, beyond the money and the parking and everything else, is the true need for this type of facility. And it's a perfect fit for me. So I think as long as we end up with a building commissioner that subscribes to that, and a town's attorney that subscribes to that, and your engineering and our engineering, I'm convinced that we can make this project work. And I think what we've done is we've boiled all the fat off the hog tonight, and we've addressed some of the major issues that, to me, have been stumbling blocks up to this point.
Yes, sir.
So I'm not sure if the board has any other comment to that, would like to say whatever they'd like, but for me, ultimately, what I'd like to do tonight is instruct Attorney Whitten to begin drafting a decision, a favorable decision, based upon the things that we talked about tonight. Understanding, of course, that we're going to have little bumps along the road. Okay. But to me, I think we're in a position where we could actually begin that process. I'm not sure how the rest of you feel.
Masterful.
Good?
A masterful
Norman?
summary.
You good with that?
Good with
Okay. Darren?
I'm on board. I'm good with that.
Does any of the audience have anything they would like to add, talk about, comment on, or anything like that?
I will add.
You need to come up to the podium, state your name and address, and then you can ask.
Anson Porter, AC Architect. I'm part of the team that's been working on this project, and as part of that, I have the site plans that show the landscaping. They show the existing. They show the proposed planting.
I can ask you to move towards that mic.
Oh, sure. And they do show the proposed lighting at the early stages, you know, based on your comments to go to LED lighting. And talking with the electrical engineer, plus Robert from Tibbetts, we've advanced it. So there's a preliminary layout showing the lights at the perimeter of the parking shining inward, so it does cut off at the property line. So I think we'd like to give those to you to, have to review.
You have to understand, when we come to a decision, we will have all the plans, and we will have the finalized plans, and that is what we will be basing a lot of our decision on. And when I asked the questions I asked about the lighting, it's because that's what we need to see. If we don't want to wait till the last day and say, oh, here's the lighting plan, what do you think about it? We'd like to have that all taken care of beforehand. So we just go, everybody knows, we've all done the talking, here's what we want, this is what we feel we need. You have certain expertise I don't have, but I know what I'm trying to do for the town and for these butters.
And as a team, we hear what your questions are and what the town is talking about, and work to update the plans and get those things incorporated. That's part of what we're all doing. So we hear you.
Do you want his,
Well, what we're gonna end up is, you're gonna include them in the master set of plans anyway.
okay.
If you've made copies, I hate to have you go home with them. So if you'd like to leave them up here, we can distribute them amongst the members, and then maybe Liz could take a look. Great, thank you very much for that.
Updated version of what you received, originally.
Mr. Soers, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I've got your notes, and Mr. Mombrau will have all this information tonight.
All right. Before we close, I would like to know if Attorney Whitten, you have any comments, suggestions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very, very briefly, the discussion about the gift or the construction of the parking lot, I guess I would ask the board and the applicant to consider those two alternatives. An applicant can make a gift to the Board of Selectmen. It's Chapter 44, Section 53A. Can make a cash gift.
Are you sure about that?
I am. And that's an advantage over having a private party do work on a public project. So I think the devil's going to be in the details, and we don't need to worry about it tonight, but that is going to be an important consideration for the board. Whether the board wants to accept, you can't require a gift, it has to be an acceptance of a gift, and that gift is accepted really by the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen would use the funds for a particular project. That may be more preferable than having High Point do work on public property, because that requires bidding, requires liability issues, so the board's going to have to deal with that. The only other substantive issue that we didn't talk about tonight, and perhaps at the next hearing, is the issue that came up at the last hearing, and that is of security. So in drafting the decision, I think the board has to be, and I know is mindful of the discussion you've had on security, the ambulance drop-off, the ambulance pickup, means of getting in and out of the facility, and then the nature of whether the security is internal, external, or both. Are these bonded security services, or these High Point employees, or these armed, unarmed? I mean, again, the devil's in the detail.
Let's hope they're unarmed, huh?
And, well, it's going to be important, I think, to get this in the decision right at the get-go. So I think if the applicant could be prepared to talk about that at the next hearing, it would be a lot easier for the board to then.
And that's actually a great point, because just by the nature of you writing and drafting this decision, most of the things are going to bubble to the surface of concerns. And again, as I stated, as it relates to the parking lot, and I think Mr. Soers was on board too, he doesn't necessarily want to entertain doing the work himself. So if we all believe that it's more preferable to have them gift through the selectmen for that and earmark it for that project, I don't have any issue with that, and I don't think any of the other board members would either.
Yeah. No, I only mentioned it, and I'm glad you re-raised that, Mr. Chairman, because if it's a gift, it can't be in the decision.
Right.
So the applicant's going to have to give some thought to making a gift, a voluntary gift can't be a requirement. So we'll have to deal with that.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Does town meeting have to vote on accepting a gift?
No, that's the difference. That's how 53A works. The selectmen can accept cash gifts for a particular purpose. Town meeting would be involved if High Point were to lease the facility. the parking facility, because it's public property. So it's a fine line between a gift and actually doing work on the property itself.
Thank you,
Thank you.
So before you leave, John, how much time do we need in order to, and I'm looking at putting together the next meeting, hearing date. And so it could be, in 4 weeks would be March, what, 13th?
February?
Well, hang on a second.
It would be February 27th.
Right, either February 27th or March 13th. What do you think is,
Here, March 13th.
okay?
Well, there's plenty of time, Mr. Chairman, I would need the plans, and I
Right.
need to make sure Pat had reviewed them, and obviously Bob had reviewed them. So if the plans are finalized, both the architectural and the engineering, the lighting, and landscaping, and I can start drafting the decision and leave placeholders for those plans, so that's plenty of time.
Would you like to plan tentatively for the February 27th date? Would that be, is that okay with you?
Sure.
And is
We
that okay?
couldn't do it at a sooner date?
I don't think we'll have everything, John
No.
will have everything drafted by then.
We can't. I will not be here and I'm voting on this.
Yeah, that's important.
So you can be here February 27th.
I can be here February 27th. I am not here February 13th.
Okay.
So, can we have a motion to continue the hearing until February 27th?
So moved. Second?
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? In favors have it, the motion carries. We
Is
shall
there
see
someone
you
who wants a set of plans?
on the 27th.
Liz, I need some. I can have
Excuse me,
on
I'm
the
sorry.
Where were you just now?
I was listening to her question. I'm sorry.
Nope, I'm just, thank you for your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
But this is more.
Mr. Chairman, I make a
Much
motion
better.
that we adjourn at 9:20.
Do I hear a second on that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, adjourned.